Well, young Reginald, it appears you've been having some interesting conversations. But whoever you're speaking of is knowledgeable, I'll tell you that much. Very few people are privy to that kind of knowledge. It's very advanced stuff. Truthfully, most don't find out about it until they're well into the B rank at least, becoming more commonplace when you reach A rank and S rank casters. To give you a basic understanding, you know that, based on what you told me, you understand that people fall into patterns, that their existence itself is a pattern that serves the universal purpose. But understanding something is a pattern and understanding the pattern itself are different matters entirely, young Reginald. There are countless patterns that exist within the universe that people fall into. There are, in fact, hundreds of them, Reginald. Finding one's pattern is actually a very time-consuming task. Complex does not begin to cover it. It can take years, Reginald. It requires going over one's life with a fine-tooth comb, examining every detail, and then comparing not only the events themselves, the dates they occurred, but also the occurrence of otherworldly events, the structures within the universe, the gears that align themselves, patterns of stars in motions, placement of the moon and the sun, the weather, the alignment of alternate universes, aka planes of existence, for example, the Fey realm. There are countless other realms, and even their alignments can factor in. There are, in fact, so many facets that it's dizzying to think about. While I'm sure I could find your specific pattern in time, for now I'd suggest you focus on other things, since you're far from ready to tap into that kind of power. It's a difficult task, Reginald. Well, according to the person, my business contact, who told me about it, he actually seemed fairly confident that I fall under a very specific pattern that he knows about. According to him, I fall under a pattern known as the Dealer, which is new to me because I didn't know that patterns had names like that. But that's what he assured me I was, and suggested that I pick up as much information on it as I can. I said, rubbing my chin and looking down at the ground, trying to think over it, and remember as many details as I could. And as I looked back up, the face Sylvia was making was sheer astonishment. I thought that who you were speaking to must have been somebody with knowledge and experience, Sylvia said, as she began to return to her calmer expression. But I think they're a fool. The chances that you fall under the sign of the Dealer are virtually non-existent, Reginald, Sylvia said, taking another hit of the tobacco pipe. As she breathed the smoke out, that large cloud filling the air for a moment before being carried away by a slight breeze. Understand, yes, there are hundreds of these universal patterns that people can fall into. Most people have more than one, being a combination of other patterns, mixtures of different effects, different structures coinciding within the same person. Very few people are specifically one pattern, and even then, there are patterns that exist in this universe, young Reginald, that are simply next to impossible to come across. Patterns so nonsensically specific that the odds that you'll meet someone who falls into one basically don't exist at all. In all my 115 years of casting in the enhancement industry, I have not yet met a single dealer. The dealer is in fact one of the 7 legendary patterns, Reginald. In fact, in all of recorded history on Earth, there have only ever been 3 recorded people who were dealers. It's basically unheard of. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but the rumor is that the devil himself, one of the most powerful casters in existence, a man who sells fortune, power, to anyone who is willing to pay the price for it, a man renowned for his magical power, and basically stands as an untouchable force in this world, is in fact the last known dealer to have come into existence. People who fall into the 7 legendary patterns have such destinies, Reginald. They are people whose very existence rewrites the fabric of what we think we know, who change the world in ways that most could hardly dream of doing. So I'm very sorry to tell you, but your friend is most likely mistaken, Sylvia said, chuckling a bit, strangely enough, for her. I'd actually love to talk to such a person, convincing a young man that he has such an audacious side. He sounds like quite the trickster. Any possibility I can meet him? She asked, still with a sly little grin on the side of her face. Well, I suppose anything is possible, Sylvia, I replied, scratching the back of my head, unsure if setting up a meeting between Sylvia and Pinstripe was a good idea. Quite frankly, I've begun to grow very concerned about his level of interest in my activities. He tends not to talk to people unless there's something he can get out of it, and he seems fairly convinced that he's going to be able to get something very valuable out of me. And as for his identity, that's not really a secret either. The person you were just talking about, the one dealing power to people, yeah, that's him. We call him Pinstripe. But after getting to know him personally, I completely understand why some people call him the devil. I mean, really, half the time he talks, he sends shivers up my spine. I'm with you, Reginald, I hear Eliza say. I mean, really, that smoke thing he does is creepy. I mean, really, who glows red and pours smoke out of random parts of their body? It's just weird. And that laughter, don't even get me started on it. It makes my legs twitchy, Eliza said, shaking her leg a little bit. I think you're being too hard on Mr. Pinstripe, Alice replied. After all, he's a salesman. Having dramatic flair is just part of the job. What? I hear Sylvia shout, exceptionally loudly. You're telling me that all 3 of you have met him, the devil, one of the most powerful people in all of existence, that you actually stood in the same room with him, spoke to you, Sylvia shouted, gripping the tobacco pipe in her hand so hard that it snapped. That is utter madness. Do you have any idea how few people who have ever seen him? Most people that do are only the people that he strikes bargains with to take something away from in exchange for something they want. You talk about him as if he's just a pal, someone who drops by. Like, hello, the devil here. Can I stop by for some tea and cookies? If this is a joke, it is most definitely not a funny one, Sylvia said, looking very upset. Oh, I'm sorry if it upsets you, Sylvia, I replied. But we're not lying. In fact, he does tend to drop by a lot. It's actually a bit disconcerting. Half the time I wish I could get rid of him. But he's taken an interest in me, as he says, saying that he expects great things. but he only recently told me that I fall into the category of dealer.